welcome to another edition of Dream Firm Spotlight. My name is Tyler S. Clark, co-founder of Dream Firms, and what we are here to discuss is the good, bad, and the ugly of private equity invading the accounting space. And believe it or not, there are actually some good things. I'm no PE apologist, but I want to try and share with you a relatively balanced take. And if you absolutely hate PE, just skip to the back of this video and I'll cover all the things that you most likely already agree with. But let's talk about the good first. So accounting, we can all agree, is something that is undervalued. It's typically undervalued by the people who actually deliver the service. It's undervalued by the people who receive the service. And if there's one thing PE is exceptionally good at, it's good at recognizing where there is a market inefficiency, where there's a gap in what the value of something is versus what people are paying for it. And so PE recognizes what we all already know, that accounting is valuable, but that it is historically undervalued. They also recognize a couple of other really key factors. One, the clients are very sticky, right? Average client sticks with the firm for 7.5 years. Number two, profit margins are excellent, right? You're talking 30% margins. Historically speaking, accounting is oftentimes number one, if not considered the most profitable profession globally of all time. PE knows this, okay? You should know it too. Number three, there's a high technical proficiency required to enter into accounting, which means there's a barrier of entry. And there are a whole bunch of other reasons for this, but if you ever pick up a textbook related to PE from Harvard or Yale, the standard that they will use for like what is a good target for a roll-up, for an acquisition, to go in and grab a bunch of the market share, they use accounting as the example. It's like the shining golden standard of like, this has tremendous opportunity. And what's funny is now they're all actually deciding to act on it. In the last 2 to 3 years, the level of PE activity has been just growing exponentially. I know this because I work as a broker for our dream clients. When they build their dream firms, we help connect buyer and seller now. So shout out to our clients who are coming back to us for that, to help sunset them. But also my father does brokerage deals. I've got many relationships with other brokers, and their phones are ringing off the hooks with, well, boomers who are retiring. We all know that the profession's aging. And PE buyers who are like, can you connect me with those listings that you have? We'd like to make an extremely compelling offer. So this brings me to a tweet I wrote that I thought was good, but not a lot of other people thought was good. But I essentially said, everyone hates PE until they're the ones cutting you the check. And so obviously the good part of PE is if you're in that sunsetting period and you've been working hard to embrace modern technology, get your clients on recurring billing schedules, you've got healthy profit margins, you've got a team in place, really you're doing north of about 1.5 million. That's like the lowest most PE firms will even consider before they'll consider fielding an offer. If you've been doing that, PE sounds pretty good to you. And the reason they sound pretty good to you is because of the size of the offers they're making compared to your average accountant. And I'll talk about why this is bad in a little bit, but from the seller perspective, it's great. I've got your average accountant who's used to paying 1x annual revenue, okay, top line revenue. So 1.5, I'll pay you 1.5, maybe a little bit more, right, depending on the negotiations. And then you've got PE coming in and they'll say, well, we'll pay you 3x revenue. So your eyes automatically are like, I just want to make sure. I mean, of course you're going to pay that. You said 3x, right? Oh, yeah, I said 3x. Oh, and we'll guarantee you a 6-figure salary for the next however long you like. How about 2 years? How's 3 years? Maybe 5? And do you want maybe a slice of the upswing? Do you want that too? Okay. Yeah, okay. We got anything else you'd like, sir? And your average accountant's not, they can't make that type of deal. Now, they may consider 2x, right? When we sell a dream firm, to be honest, we know they're worth 2x. And so this brings me to another point is like, yes, they're making larger offers, but they're also now help course correcting the market overall to what the true value of an accounting firm actually is. Just being real, right? Like even if you sell for 2x revenue, as long as the margins are appropriate, you're making your money back in 2 years. That's amazing. That's still amazing. And that assumes the book of business doesn't grow at all, which it almost always does. So you have these multiple factors of like PE recognizes there's an opportunity gap, right? Like they can see it, a market inefficiency. They're coming in, they're capitalizing on it, and they're capitalizing in on firms that have actually taken the time to make the changes that deeply benefit them, their clients, and their staff. And then they're giving them payouts that, quite frankly, no one else can touch right now. I'm going to talk about something else that this is good for, and it might sound controversial, but this is also good for the employees. I know, take a deep breath. It's good for employees because I had during our annual mastermind in France, we bring out our top clients, super cool. We do some interviews. I interviewed one of these PE managers, and I can't say who it was, but I said, hey man, when you make one of these deals and you have one of these transitions, isn't there maybe like a general uproar from the employees? Like, aren't they scared or nervous? And he goes, well, no. And I'm, well, why? That's, if I was that employee, I'd be a little nervous given the reputation PE has. And he goes, well, it's all about how you handle it. There are good PE firms and there are bad PE firms. Fair point, right? But we're one of the good ones. And the reason we're one of the good ones is because the first thing that we do is we don't change anything other than increasing overall comp. I was like, well, if I'm an employee, that sounds pretty good. And he goes, yeah, well, the easiest way that we achieve that is simply by economies of scale. If you're your $2 million run accounting firm, your employee benefit package just isn't that good just because of how small you are. Like there are just certain things that aren't accessible to you because of the size of the company you have. And so what we do is as soon as we bring on a new firm, they immediately get all their employees rolled into our much more extensive coverage for healthcare, dental, vision, the works. It's the proverbial golden handcuffs, and why it's so hard to leave corporate America sometimes is because your total comp is so high because they're covering so many other things. And the same thing now happens for the employees as well. So they get a better benefit package as well. The next big thing that PE is good for, in my opinion, is actually forcing change. So I don't think anyone's going to be too surprised when I'm like, hey, accountants are a little slow to change. The industry is slow to change. This can be good. It can also be bad. But if you start to look at the way the top 50 firms have been running, and I want to give a quick shout out to CFO Brew. They've got a great story on private equity is reshaping the accounting profession. We'll link them down below this video. But one of the things that they pointed out is that for the larger firms, in the top 100 that are not going the private equity route, and a lot of them are for the reasons I've just expounded upon. But what they're doing other things now. So they're looking at ESOPs, right? And so employee stock ownership plans, which is, again, beneficial, in my opinion, for the industry at large. Everyone's like, we'd like a larger slice of the pie. How do you do that? Well, ESOPs is a fantastic way to do that. The second thing is they're also looking at doing potentially IPOs. And I've always kind of been like, it'd be nice to have a larger share of my portfolio made up of a variety of different accounting firms. So if more firms IPO, well, that lets them resist the pull of course, private equity, because they'd now be publicly traded companies. So there's a nice change in the way that the top firms are conducting themselves to resist the pull of private equity, which I can legitimately argue is a good thing. And I'll say, this part here is I believe that the more you interact with wealthy people, the more you learn about money. And so if you interact with private equity in really any meaningful capacity, you yourself become a little bit smarter about business. So like these guys are really smart. I think there's this really funny myth on social media that private equity is full of stupid people. But stupid people who've solved the problem of making tons of money. They're absolutely, totally, it's just silly. At the very least, just give them the grace that like, okay, you're very smart. about the money side of things and how money works and how to make good deals, even if those deals are maybe not good overall for the benefit of the public, they're certainly good from that perspective. So again, every time I've interacted with them, they're professional. They're extremely accommodating. They're sharp. They ask great questions. I learn something every time I interact with them. And that's not true for every type of person I interact with. Sometimes I'm like, I don't really think I did. I definitely didn't learn anything from that. But they are smart. So that's the good. Maybe there's some more good things, but honestly, that's the majority of the good things that I see happening in private equity. Now we're going to talk the bad, and then we're going to talk the ugly. So the bad part of this is the proverbial golden handcuffs, right? Like golden handcuffs basically means that the money is so good that you are now tied to the organization more or less against your will. Now, I don't know about you, but nearly every entrepreneurial accountant I've talked to did not get into it to go back to feeling like they were tied to golden handcuffs from their corporate job. Like they're not, that's the exact opposite thing that they're trying to get away from. So know that with the large paycheck comes large responsibilities. Okay. You don't think that they're going to cut big checks without having you do more than what would come from your average accountant who's buying your firm. Okay. There's a difference between 2X and 3X. There's a difference between 1X and 3X. Just know that again, like there's more that comes along with that. So can be considered good, but generally speaking, I consider golden handcuffs to be a bad thing. The other thing that is bad, and again, it's more of like they're smart, and I think other accounting firm owners would be wise to think like this, but it's bad for the average employee. So the average employee, let's just go ahead and say is like that $60,000 a year employee, okay? Your firm might employ 3 of them, but PE will quickly recognize that one of them can do the work of 3 of them, or they'll hire someone that they think at least can do the work of 3 people, and they'll pay them $100,000. And then they'll remove the 3 $60,000 a year people. And so they're good at cutting costs, optimizing efficiencies. But the bad part of that is usually it comes at the expense of putting a lot of work on a singular person for an okay to good salary, and then removing people who are at needed salaries. They're still good at what they do. They're just not workhorses. And I think that's a bad thing. The next part of this is when you have a PE buyer, the due diligence for this is extremely complex. It's extremely elongated. It is just like, if you're talking like the average accountant to the average accountant for an acquisition, it's not quite like deal, here are my clients, but it's pretty close. Like they should do more due diligence. I'm a big proponent of like, you've got to do at least, like a month of legitimate due diligence, seriously, because it's a big deal. Like it truly is. And to skip over that is just silly, and it creates big problems down the line. But the other side of that is like, we're going to interview your mom. We're going to, I need all your social media profiles. I need all your clients' social media. I need all your LTV stats. Like most accounting firms don't even have the advanced statistics that PE is asking for. And what's funny is when I interviewed that PE manager during our mastermind, I said, what are the main numbers that you guys really want to see? And he laughed and he's like, yeah, we gave up on that after our first couple of tries because they just don't have it. Like they are not collecting the level of data we typically expect and see in a normal acquisition. And I was like, isn't that a little weird that accounting firms don't have that level of data? Isn't that? And he was like, man, you don't know the half of it. So look, is it a requirement to have that level of stuff to do this? No. Can it gunk up, slow down a deal, maybe waste a lot of your time? Yeah. And is that a bad thing? I think it is. Which brings me to my next point, and this is bad. I think this is the worst part about it. It's borderline ugly. So one of the weirder things that you'll see about PE is they will make requests in legal agreements that they know are most likely unenforceable. Okay. So what do I mean by that? So I recently I recently saw a term sheet, um, and they were asking for a 10-year non-compete. Now, if you're loosely following non-compete laws and what's going on, like it seems like it's not even like legal at all. Like, period. That's my current understanding. I'm not a lawyer. That's my current understanding of it. And I was like, these guys have legal departments that are like enormous. They obviously they know that. Why would they even put this in here? And why are they arguing for it intensely? Like what? Because this is the bad part, is they know that they can throw their weight around. They know that they could gunk you up in legal proceedings for years. They know that the amount they spend on legal in a month is more than you'll ever be able to spend on legal in your lifetime. And they're not afraid to throw their weight around. And that's bad, right? Like, because if you have your average accountant with your average accountant coming together, they both are trying to avoid litigation at all costs because no one wins. In PE's case, they know if it comes to litigation, they know they win. They know you can't win. They know that even if you win, it doesn't matter because it'll be years before it gets resolved. And time is on their side, it's not on your side. So again, that to me is just bad. You just got to be really careful about letting them dictate the terms of the agreement. And I'll give you a small tip here. If you do get involved with PE negotiations and you are the seller, you want to craft the agreement first. In other words, the agreement. If it comes from your side first, you have more power, you have more control. If it comes from their side first, you're on every single one of their points. You're basically playing on their turf as opposed to on your turf. It's a small distinction in the beginning, but believe me when I say it makes a big difference for them to inject things into your agreement as opposed to you trying to subtract things from theirs. Big difference. Anyhow, and I this one briefly earlier, but again, the bad here is demand on the employees. They're expecting more for less. They're going to have increased management protocols, principles. They will be stricter, tougher on employees in general. And again, I think that's bad. It's not quite ugly, but it's definitely not what I would consider good. And that comes along with, again, they're offering potentially more benefits. So you can give a little bit of leeway there, but it's usually much more extreme than that. The ugly. All right. So last bit here. So one of the principles that PE operates on, I would argue it's the number one principle that they operate on, is it's easier to cut costs than grow revenue. I'm going to say that again. It's easier to cut costs than grow revenue. So PE's fundamental value proposition is they will come in and they'll say, we're going to the core business model and we're cutting everything that's not that. Good, bad, or indifferent, that can lead to some really ugly decisions that hurt a lot of people and can hurt the industry at large. So there's this, there's pretty well-known studies, social media, like back and forth, but the question is, what has PE made better? Like, what have they actually improved for an industry? And the silence is deafening when you ask that question to even the most vehement of PE defenders. They really don't have an answer. And it's because there isn't one. Generally speaking, and from what I have seen, read, and looked at, when private equity goes aggressively into an industry, that industry suffers for it. That is extremely ugly. It's not a say, because you don't want to think that these people have bad intentions. No one wants to think that, and I don't think they do. But their goal is profit. Their goal is to take the business, make it more valuable, and in 5 to 7 years, flip it. And I read an analogy on this, and I think it holds a lot of weight or a lot of water. The analogy is, it's the difference between a home owner and a home flipper. A homeowner is deeply invested in growing the equity of the property. They're invested in the trim, in the appliances that they select, that they last a long time, the type of warranties that they're invested in it. The flipper is interested in what shows well on paper. the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms. But anything that they can get away with, generally speaking, they will, because it impacts how much money they make. The homeowner is living there, so they act in a different way. And I think that's a great way of thinking about what the impact will be on PE and accounting. Yes, there will be a lot of people who get very, very from it, wealthier than they ever would have been if PE didn't come into it. That is a good thing for the individuals, for sure. The flip side of that, however, is what happens after those people sunset, when you take arguably the best of the best, the ones who are pioneering growth in the profession, growing wages, treating their staff well, embracing technology. What happens when you remove all of those people, or a lot of them? I think you end up with a largely stagnated industry. I think you also end up with the clients oftentimes have a hard time understanding why prices go up, right? I mean, if you've ever tried to have a price increase conversation with a client and didn't just, do the, I won't call it lazy, but like the non-ideal experience of just sending them a letter saying your price is higher and, closing your eyes. Like, I think that's the worst way to do it. But you can get away with, marginal increases. You can't do large increases like that. You usually get some form of pushback, but you usually also get acceptance. And part of the reason they accept it is, yeah, the value, of course, of the service, but mainly because of the relationship to the firm, to oftentimes the owner. And now, instead of it being, I work with Tim and Tim's firm, I work with Shadow Corp, the faceless, yeah, maybe the frontline person's great, maybe, but now all of a sudden your price goes up, and for the benefit of who? It's not for the benefit of Tim and Tim's staff and the community that Tim supports in this area with the money we spend for his services. It goes to enriching a billionaire that I'll never know the name of. And I think that's pretty ugly, to be honest. It's not bad. It's ugly when you boil it down to that. So I think clients will get even more increasingly cost conscious. And I think the ramifications of whether the Shadow Corp is doing it or whether the Spun firm is doing it, I think the pushback is going to be a little bit even more severe as time moves forward here. So I think the image of the industry is going to get uglier. And for an industry that's already suffering with an image problem in terms of getting new people invested in, if you ask me, do you think PE is going to reverse the image trend of accounting, or is it going to get uglier? It would be really hard for me to say it's going to get prettier. I think it's going to get uglier, and I think it's going to get uglier faster than people realize. So that's what I got for you today. I hope I brought some truth, some insight to you, maybe some things you already knew. And if you have some other thoughts about PE, I see a lot of stuff going on in the chat right now, which I very much appreciate the comments from Jim here. I would love to see what your thoughts are on PE. Maybe I got it right. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I got a little bit of both, but let me know. And if you would like to participate in conversations like this, become a target for a premium acquisition, PE or not, it starts with creating your dream firm. So you know the deal. Links will be floating around down below. There's a link in the chat, obviously, right now. You can go to dreamfirms.com as well to be able to book your call. My name is Tyler S. Clark. Thank you so much for your most precious resource. Remember that only you can create your dream firm, but we are here to help you every single step of the way. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and best of luck if you get contacted by PE, and feel free to reach out if you need a little bit of help. See ya.